The last thing that you probably want to do is you'll want to share data and you'll want to save data and you'll want to create your own functions. And right now you can't even create your own function, right? The only place you can create a function is inside this callback. So if you want to create your own functions, or if you want to save data, maybe you've got some sort of interactive thing where the user types data and you want to save it if something else is pressed. To create your own functions or to save data in code view, you go over to this left window, and just like callbacks show all of your current callbacks, you've only got one so far for UI button pushed. You can create your own functions up here. Just as a quick example, let's abstract out the die roll. We can press plus. We've got our own function. And now we can say, let's not say results. Let's say result equals, instead of calling it function, I'm going to call it die roll. And here's my function. And now that I've got my function defined up here, down here, I can just say die roll. The default creation of a function requires you to always pass at least the app variable, even if you're not using any of it. And now when you roll this, remember to save it, run it, and it still works as advertised. And now you've created your own special function. And the very last thing you might want to do is to create data that's saved in between uses. And to do that, you go under properties, choose some sort of data that you want to keep. Like for instance, let's say it's called my data. Whoops, I have to press. There it is. Call it my data. You can initialize it if you want to. And now anytime that you need to access this my data component from any callback, it's always going to be available as app.mydata, and you can write to it or read from it. So for instance, I can't think of a good reason why you'd use it in this particular case, but in more complicated systems, I promise you, you will have on your design over here, you might have multiple places where users put in data. You might have data that you might have then some sort of complicated function that acts on the data. Let's say that you have a button that has you load a file, a WAV file. And the first time it's loaded, it's read into memory. That would be a good place to save that data into what it calls a property, which is just this. And then later on, when you press another button that might say low pass filter it will grab this data from here. If you wanted to grab that data down here, you would type app.mydata, and that will return that back. We could say something like this, app.mydata. Problem is that's numeric again. We'd have to say num to string, save it. Now when you roll it, it presses 4, and it will always be 4 because it's always recalling that non-changing app.mydata. Any questions for me?
So just the properties or that value, that's just a global in terms of our app.
There are no global variables. It's all within app, and it's all a structure, and that's why the app has to be passed to everything so you have access to it. If you want to be more elegant about it, there's different types of methods. There are actually static methods that don't require you to pass the app variable that probably philosophically would be better for this. MATLAB is not a language that I would use to make syntactically pretty programs. MATLAB is the language that I use to make down and dirty, fast, get it done prototyping programs to show a client. And then once they give it their okay, switch it over into a more complex language that has philosophically beautiful syntax, better support for object-oriented features like polymorphism and inheritance, but will then take a lot more programming time to make work.